Meba Lada Menam Jed Sanjay Jumden Bejawa Shaja Shaz Chudo Jazo Shewo Dumba Jumden Dishin Rajuma Yandaba Zobe Sanjay Riva Devarishavan Jiden Jamba Jivon Duvia Kalo Lana Meba Lada Menam Jed Sanjay Jumden Bejawa Shaja Tuba Shazelo Jodo Jazo Dumba Jumden Dishin Shaba Rajuma Yandaba Zobe Sanjay Rivada Shazon Demon Devarishavan Jiden Jamba Jivon Duvia Kalo Lana Meba Lada Menam Jedamba Sanjay Jumden Bejam Shaja Tuba La Chazelo Jodo Jazo Sheo Kanze Kanyan Zo Jadamazea Sajan de La Comba Debra Manen Jiden de La Chojeso de Zekia Bajama Namda Kunga Chodo Suzawa Yishi Jazu Sejan Chaban Jiden Somna Mabeba Gombo Shonye Jana Chaz Senjo de Martimenta Vesha Sendon Dawa Jana Chaz De Jana Seva Somachi Yami Jenjen Jana Chaz Gombo Tuji Chedema Tamji Chembedema Sonoma Yenden Jazuin de Shama Chaz Taben de Jachewa Jung giving us on the Chedu de Lama Shoju Shinju Jana Chaz Chene Jeva Laya de Lava Tama Rabu Ne Shinga Tama Yenden Gende Laya Chaz Zalon de Bachian Mejas Gawa Pison Sobache Ranges and the Yosu Tene Sanje Dema Karma Ravi Mameda Jumase Chubrata Memo Mota Tenda Janum de Drada Solomon Dia from Jesse Kovantum Jinjin Radu de Gadam Dada Chiva Lapju Sibezon and Joan Javarisho
to the teacher,
Blessed One, the one beyond, the poor destroyed, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata of the world, supreme guide of beings to retain, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely fully awakened, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shaja. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata of the world, supreme guide of beings to retain, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, no other word, supreme guide of beings to attend, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shaja clan. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When of supreme humans, you are born in this earth. You paced outside strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With the pure bodies form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like golden mountain, flame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme size, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the three worlds in one, incomparably wise, to you I prostrate. The Savior, having great compassion, the teacher, having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like vast ocean, to you the one gone to dustness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtues which frees one from lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy faith qualified with realization, who are devoted to the moral precept, to you the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. The star, mirage, flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop or two, or bubble, a dream, a flash of light in a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain rank of all seeing. Subdue the four faults, and be delivered from ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. Sanje chono, chanju pado dane jasu che, dagi jasu je ka soma. Dola benje sanje joba shuno, sanje chono, chanju pado dane jasu che, dagi jasu je ka soma. Dola benje sanje joba shuno, sanje chono, chanju pado dane jasu che, dagi jasu je ka soma. Dola benje sanje joba shuno, sanje chono, chanju pado. Dagin Jesu Jeba Sonam Jendola Penja Sanjan Jobare Show. Go for refuge until enlightened through the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Through the merit I create, practice, and giving and the other afflictions. May I quickly attain to see the Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened through the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create, practice, and giving and the other afflictions. May I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practice and giving and the other perfections. May I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Pumia Bumbo Legion Medala Bumedena Medicinship Medicinship Gede Sanji Bumbo. Then a Rajin, the Yamarajin, and the government of the General Kashi Tadanya. Kajadanya Meba, the Cheda, the Jinshabu, get the Raji, Yamana Shiwin, you by Cheda. Rajadan, the Jamona Modo, the Jinsha, the Kang, Kede Pumbo Matem, the Jinshabu, then a Tabu Tingish. Then it in a Jolana Bumbo Madam, the Jinshabu, Kajama, the Yamana, Denish. Yawana Mama Yamba, Yawan Lemberchim, and Yawan Lemba, the Jinshabu, Jam, among the Asian. Kaji, the Nijin, the Meba, the Jinshabu, then Yawan Lemberchim, Kajin Yawan, the Tenor. Dagamala Kamaba, the Jim, the Yuri again, Tadanya London, Lama Tombe, the Shisha, Tomo was a measure, Meloshi, neither Nimi, Mr. David, Tadam, she went the La Cala, Tada, Tomela, she went the Congregation, the Botu Bosun. Ten young and devil, a measure number of Rajan, Sanjin, and then the Yurish. Sambateba Nimenjo Kanda Sanja Jendage, Savamel, Treasure, Trivenia, Patibunja, the Jinshu. The Jinshawa Rajima, Tendon, the Rajina, the Jinshu, one dear. The Jinshawa Tabashi, Nishunya Bao, Kangi to was there, and Yerazo, Tawatan Japan, Tabation, Quadamatama, Charles, no. Page 80, I think page 80, right? Page 80.
Yeah, we read how the Ten Grounds Sutra demonstrates that.
Okay. So this whole, I think it's started from the, in the sutra, that says the, how say it? From the first ground and the second ground until sixth, Bodhisattva, so noble being, can outshine the Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha Arhats through their collection of merit, not through the intelligence. So, right. So then, starting from the seventh ground, and they will not only outshine Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha Arhat through the merit, they also outshine this arhats through their intelligence. So this implying, Lama Tsongkapha says, it implies that arhat, in order for liberation, in order for the liberate from second existence, in order for liberate from the second existence, you have to have a realization emptiness. Without realization emptiness, even the two arhats is no possible to overcome or eliminate all the afflictive emotions, including the seed of the afflictive emotions. So this is what in the Prasangika school, arhat, Sharvaka arhat, Pratika Buddha arhat, and Bodhisattvas, noble being and enlightened. So the mother of all this, the Arya beings, the mother of the all Arya being is the realization emptiness. So realization emptiness is like the mother that give birth, arhat, the Sharvaka arhat, Pratika Buddha arhat, and Bodhisattvas, and then Buddha. So all born from the realization emptiness. So without realization emptiness, you cannot even attain the noble path. Right. So this is kind of debatable. Many of the school of thoughts in the Buddhists, like including the Middle Autonomous School and the Minority School, Sotandika School, Vaibhashika School, they think that wisdom realizing emptiness is not required for total elimination of afflictive emotions. Right. So the Prasangika school says, yes, it is required, it is necessary to have the realization emptiness in order for overcoming the seed of the afflictive emotion, because the afflictive emotion means the root of the afflictive emotion, or kind of, is the misconception or the grasping of self of phenomena. Is the so then that very misconception is, again, it is the afflictive emotion. So the below the Prasangic schools and all this Buddhist school of thought, so they divided ignorance, misconceptions, divided into two, and non-deluded misconceptions and deluded misconceptions. So deluded misconception means the grasping of self person is the deluded misconception. The grasping of self of phenomena is undiluted or non-diluted afflictive emotions. Misconception, yeah, not delusional misconception.
I don't quite understand. I mean, I see one is self and one is phenomena, but I don't see why one is qualified as delusionary and one is non-delusionary.
So, and also, I think when it comes to the defining the misconceptions or the grasping of self. So, grasping of self, they hear the other than the Prasangika school, the grasping of self, I mean, the self is not the intrinsic self, is the self-sufficient I. So there's a grasping or apprehending the self-sufficient I is a delusional mind, and then conceiving the self intrinsically existing is not the delusional. So other than Prasangic school, this is. The Prasangic school says the self intrinsically exists. Self with base. Self something exists within the, right? Within the, so this is self or I should be findable when we try to pinpoint. It has to be findable. It has to be pointable. And so then, like Sadantika school and mind-only school, they all says, and what is that self? Is there any illustration of I within the 5 aggregates? Right? Illustration of I within the 5 aggregates. And they say, yes, there is the illustration of I within the 5 aggregates. And particularly here is a continuum of the consciousness, mental consciousness. Continuum of the mental consciousness is I, or the self, or person, right? So, in the Prasangic school, there is no illustration of I within the 5 aggregates. There is no illustration of I within the 5 aggregates. So the self never exists from the body, self never exists from the feeling, self or I never exists from the eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, even the mental consciousness, even the continuum of the consciousness, right? The I never exists from it. So I never exist from it. And other school of thought, mind-only school, this is self should be exist from the 5 aggregates. Otherwise, self or I become non-existent. Right. So, and similar, and then we says, and how about a forest? And the forest is a singular. Can it be exist? Is there any illustration of forest within each trees? So, so then there says, yeah, a forest. The Prasangic school, the forest, a forest as a singular, never exists from each trees, but based on the collection of the trees and conceptually designated the a forest as a singular. So designative phenomena, and based on the designations, based on collection of the trees, all those bases are divided of a forest. So, like a chariot, the chariot that exists, right, designatively, chariot that exists designated based on the collections of the chariot, or will, and then what's called the will of the chariot, and then what the main form, right? The main carriage or will, and then horses or cow, right? So all together, all when they combine, when the kind of based on that the assembly of this whole part of the chariots, so conceptually designate a chariot. Right? The chariot never exists within the will, it never exists within the horse, never exists within the how is that? Carriage, yeah. Is not necessarily is findable within the basis. So anyway, this is why the Prasangic school, the main point is Prasangic school says, in order for overcome the afflictive emotions, so afflictive emotion derive from the grasping of self phenomena the grasping of self, a person, the both is the source, or kind of, the source of the afflictive emotions, right? As long as you are not really removing, as long as you haven't removed this, the grasping of self, a person, and the phenomena, there is no way you can overcome the afflictive emotions. So this is kind of, different school of thought. So, and how to 10 Grounds Sutra that demonstrate that Shavaka and the Pratyeka Buddha possess the realization of phenomena as lacking intrinsic existence. So this is twofold, explaining clearly the intent of the commentary author and how this is also the standpoint of the guide to the Bodhisattva base. So Lama Tsongkapha is saying that this kind of, necessity of the realization of emptiness is not only the intent of the Chandrakirti, this is also the thought, intent of Shantideva. Shantideva, Chandrakirti, Aryadeva, Nagarjuna, they all agree that the realization of emptiness is the only, or it is the main antidote to overcome the afflictive emotions. Without that, there is no possible of overcoming the seed of the afflictive emotions. So, explaining clearly the intent of the commentary author on the basis of this citation from the 10 Grounds Sutra, where it states that on the 6th ground and below, the Bodhisattvas, they cannot outshine the Shavaka and Pratyeka Buddha through his realizations. It can be clearly determined that Shavaka and the Pratyeka Buddha also possess the knowledge that phenomena lack intrinsic existence. Without such wisdom, then, like the seer, who become the free from attachment towards all level of cyclic existence, accept the peak of existing through the mundane path, weaving the realms of the existence in terms of gradations of refinement. Shavaka and Pratyeka Buddha are two would be outshone, right? Through his realizations, even by the Bodhisattvas who has generated the first ground of the ultimate awakening mind. This would be so because the Shavaka and the Pratyeka Buddha would lack the knowledge that things lack intrinsic existence. So then there is a two kind of, the way to overcoming the afflictive emotions, the way the applying the remedy for the afflictive emotions. In the non-Buddhist school, they call mundane path. The mundane path, which is the kind of, considered the remedy for the afflictive emotions. Through the mundane path, you can temporarily stop the manifestation of the afflictive emotions through the single-pointed meditations.
What is the meaning of the peak of existence?
So peak of existence, so here I think it said mundane path, as I mentioned last Sunday, mundane path means, this is also called Shira Nambache, like single-pointed meditation on the sound, Om sound, or single-pointed meditation on the Shiva, a single-pointed meditation on the in non-Buddhist school, kind of, the heat of the body or the light. So it's single-pointed meditations. So this is, if you spend enough time single-pointedly meditating on the kind of, the Om or the Shiva or the sound or the any, how's that? Yeah, so it's like, I think we should stick with one, the Om sound of the Om, single-pointed meditate. And through that, you can, like, pacify the afflictive emotion temporarily. So temporarily means you can not let the afflictive emotion to manifest, right, through the power of single-pointed meditations. This is called mundane path, right? So, yeah.
So that state is what is called the peak of existence.
No.
Oh.
So this is what they're saying. Now, how much this single-pointed meditation can overcome, right? All the afflictive emotions through this mundane path, you can overcome all the afflictive emotions. And then they said no. So mundane path can temporarily not letting the afflictive emotions to manifest, like the form realm. And within the formless realm, there's 4 stages of the formless realm. So the first state of formless realm, second state of formless realm, and the third. So until that, you can, through the single-pointed meditation, you can overpower, or you can temporarily pacify it. But the final state of the formless delusions, it cannot be overcome. It cannot be stopped by the mundane path, because the mundane's the antidote. There is no, because mundane, the antidote, the best of the best, their antidote is the single-pointed meditation through the formless meditation. So the formless meditation, so it can overcome below the formless realms. The formless afflictive emotion cannot be overcome by the formless meditation. So the peak of afflictive emotion is called the final state of formless realms delusion. So anyway, there's a kind of, which means the grossly, which means the mundane path, the single-pointed meditation can overcome certain afflictive emotions, not letting them manifest for temporarily. Right. So here we are talking about applying the antidote, which can root out, or which can eliminate the seed of the afflictive emotions. The seed of the afflictive emotions, the root of the afflictive emotion is misconceptions. As long as you haven't rooted out the misconception, there is no way you can eliminate the seed of the afflictive emotions. So this is why realization emptiness is necessary for the eliminating the afflictive emotions.
That's regardless of what being you are, what stage, whether you are human or form of animals. It doesn't matter whether you are a formless being or form.
Human being, remain with human being, you can overcome the human's afflictive emotion through kind of formless meditation, form realms meditations. The form realm meditation can overcome by the formless meditation, right? So the best of their meditation is the formless, right? So they're saying that, so the best of your meditation is the formless single-pointed meditations. That only can overcome the below the formless, not the formless delusions. So it's overcoming means a temporarily and not letting them manifest. Right. So Lama Tsongkapha is saying is, if the Shavaka and the Pratika Buddha Arhat, if they do not possess the realization emptiness, so then this Shavaka and the Pratika Buddha Arhat should be outshone by the first ground of the Bodhisattvas, right? Because the first ground of the Bodhisattvas have direct realization emptiness, and true Arhat, right? True Arhat do not possess the realization emptiness. Just by that, because when the Arhat haven't possessed the realization emptiness, they haven't really completely overcome the afflictive emotions. So Lama Tsongkapha says, then that's really obvious that in the sutra, Buddha Shakyamuni's, Buddha's here in the sutras should mention that first ground, the second ground also outshine the true Arhat through intelligence, not just merit. Because so true Arhat, so they are Arhat like a mundane practitioner. So they haven't really totally overcome the afflictive emotions because they do not possess the wisdom realizing emptiness. So if the true Arhat means free from all the afflictive emotions, even the seed of the afflictive emotions, then they should have the realization emptiness. Without realization emptiness, it is impossible to overcome the seed of the afflictive emotions. So it's kind of, the root of the afflictive emotions. The root of the afflictive emotion is a misconception, the grasping of mental construct, right? The grasping of self-phenomena, self-person, right? As long as you have the grasping of self, for example, mind grasping on intrinsic existing of the body, then that means he should the grasping of the intrinsic self, because the body is intrinsically exist, and I should be the body, intrinsic existing of the body, who possess the person also intrinsically exist. Right.
Kyoshe, I'm trying to understand. I may have misidentified the term you use. It sounds like there are afflictions which are mundane, which are related to form, and afflictions which are more profound and non-mundane, which go beyond the realm of form. And those which are beyond the realm of form, I gather, are non-characterizable. And
yeah. Let me say this. So if we talk in the below the Prasangika school, then those medieval autonomous school, mind-only school, and they think that misconceptions, particularly the grasping of self phenomena, and they consider this is not the delusional, this is not afflictive emotion, right? So this is misconception, but not the, misconception, but not necessarily, not the afflictive emotions. Then we ask, what is that afflictive emotions? So afflictive emotions like anger, attachment, jealousy, these are, of course, they are afflictive emotions. And the grasping self-sufficient I is the root of those afflictive emotions. then grasping a self-sufficient I, or conceiving self-sufficient I, is the afflictive emotion, and the anger, attachment are all derived from and concept of self-sufficient I. So you remember the Right Seedling Sutras. Right Seedling Sutra says the grasping of the self person and the grasping of self phenomena both are afflictions, pain, cancer. This is it says. So it is the pain, it is the afflictions. So the Prasangika school follow the Right Seedling Sutras and the other many of those Mahayana Sutra, they say. So Buddha says that this, the grasping of self, person, and phenomena equally, there are afflictive emotions. Right? So in order for kind of the eliminate these two misconceptions, and you have to have realization emptiness. So realization emptiness means nothing, realization of the nothing truly existence, right? So not truly exists. Nothing is truly exists. Nothing is absolutely exist. So anything that is absolute, anything that is objectively exists, anything that you see the objectivities, so that is misconceptions, right? Seeing objectivity with phenomena, seeing objectivity with person are misconception, is afflictive emotions. So, and then another story, that's another another story. Non-Buddhist school, how do they, because they too have the concept of liberation. They too have the concept of liberations and attaining, some Jainism says every sentient being can be Bhagavan, right? So there are, every sentient beings are suitable to become the Bhagavan. And other than the Jainism, this is, you are not going to be Bhagavan, but you will be inseparable. You can enter, or into the Bhagavan. And some Samkhya school, this is, it's not you becoming Bhagavan, you just, you can free from the afflictive emotions. The Samkhya school, this is, you can free from afflictive emotion. Right? And Jainism and one part of the Samkhya school, they don't believe that God creates. Right? Jainism don't believe that the creation of the God. And one part of the Samkhya school, they also reject refuting the creations. But another part of the Samkhya school, and many of those non-Buddhist school, they believe God create, or creators, right? But all kind of have the same goal. They think even the ordinary people, ordinary human sentient being, through meditation, they can overcome afflictive emotions. So then, what is that path that can overcome the afflictive emotions? So that is non-Buddhist school. So they don't really practice the emptiness. They don't practice the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths. So what do they have? The path or antidote, which they believe it can overcome the afflictive emotion, is the mundane path, single-pointed meditations. The single-pointed meditations, the mundane path. So this single-pointed meditation, right, within the sound of Om or the Shiva. So when you meditate, your single-pointed meditation become form realms consciousness, form realm concentrations. Even you're a human being, you can achieve the form realms concentration. You can achieve formless realm concentration. Right. So when human being, through the meditation, their mind achieve through the single-pointed meditation form realms concentrations, which means you have overcome the human being's desire. So you are free from the human beings or desire realms, the afflictive emotions. So then, once you overcome, right? Once you overcome the desire realms, the delusions. Now, what is another problem is, so you have achieved the form realms concentration, right? So form realms concentration is not enough to overcome the form realms delusion. So again, you have to gain the formless realms. Right? Formless realm, the first state of formless realm, second state of formless realm, third state of formless realm, and the peak of the formless realm. So again and again says, yes, the first state of formless realm can overcome, prevent the desire realms, afflictive emotion, form realms, and afflictive emotion. And the first state of and the second state of the formless concentration can overcome first state of formless realm and form realms delusion and desire realms delusions. The last state, the peak of the formless realm concentrations, that can overcome below that, but not the peak of the formless realms delusion. So there's something left and not being able to remove, right? So this is what they call it's a mundane's path. Mundane's path. So all this path, you can, make all the afflictive emotion inactive, right? Inactive. But here the Buddha says you are making afflictive emotions inactive through the single-pointed meditations. Making inactive is not overcoming, not eliminating. So sometimes you can just overpower something for the short time, and if you let go of that antidote, and then all the delusions come back.
If it's a single point meditation, it's the mundane path. This is not something that is practiced by Buddhist school.
Buddhist school, and particularly Mahayana practice, yes, they use both single-pointed meditations and meditating on the 16 attributes. So non-Buddhist school only single-pointed meditations. So single-pointed meditation and analytical meditation. So both practice in the Mahayana path. So anyway, this is kind of, sometimes not really is not the complicated, but it seems sometimes because the lack of information is the right. So maybe this. Where is that?
Yes, can you also tell us about when it says the mundane path, also it describes the mundane path as a viewing the realms of existence in terms of a gradation of refinement. Does that mean that you're looking at the realms by one after another?
Yeah. So first you're within the human being's mind. So applying the best of the human being mind, single-pointed meditations. So it can, the best of the single-pointed meditations called like the synthetic means there's 9 stages of the human being concentrations. The final, the 9th, is the finest mind of the human being, desire, right? So the right after that, and then become shine, come abiding. So come abiding and continuously meditating and come abiding, then you can you can achieve the form realms concentration. So when you reach the form realms concentrations, it seems that you have no desirums, afflictive emotions, like humanly what we attach. These are all become pacified temporarily. So so the gradation means like that. So you just kind of step by step, you just go. In the Mahayana path, if you practice through the realization emptiness, then it's not the step by step, right? So you don't have to go at the round trip, just shortcut, right? So you're just penetrating afflictive emotion at once, right? So because you're directly opposing the root of the afflictive emotion. So mundane path, like, mundane path is the single-pointed meditations without, knowledge of 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, without knowledge of emptiness, just single-pointed meditations, right, alone. That's mundane path. So, and also, this is also kind of making clear that single-pointed meditations not always necessary at the mundane path, right? Single-pointed meditation without knowledge of 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, without emptiness. So that's called mundane path. So the commentary statement that, again, I'm just read it. The commentary statement that otherwise, like a non-Buddhist seer, Shavaka and the Pratyeka Buddha would not have eliminated all the afflictive emotions pertaining to the 3 realms along with their seats, indicates that if Shavaka and the Pratyeka Buddha have not familiarized themselves with emptiness by perfectly realizing it, so they will not have destroyed the seed of the afflictive emotions. So it's kind of persistently kind of proving that even the Hinayana path, Mahayana path, whatever the path, if that is the path for liberation, enlightenment, it should kind of associate it, it should contain the wisdom realizing emptiness. Without that, there's no possible. So that means true arhat, the Shavaka and the Pratyeka Buddha, they have, they have realized total and complete emptiness. The path will resemble the mundane path that views the realms of the existence comparative terms of the fine and coarse. The fine and coarse, Shira Nambaji, view of the realms. But this is just kind of, we have this term, the languages, the core and the fine and coarse. But I'm not sure what that in this Asanga's text will say the fine and coarse means. So those single-pointed mundanes, like mundane path, non-Buddhist school, meditating on the Om sound for years and years. They meditate on that, and they also subsequently always think that the desire realms has more problem, form realms comparatively more peaceful. So they have to kind of like a feeding mind. They say, oh, you should continuously do the single-pointed meditations. Here's everything is perishable, everything is pain, and how's there so many problems in the human beings and the animal realms and the lower realms, and comparatively the form realm is much, much better, much more peaceful, right? And that really kind of gives courage continuously, encouragement to single-pointed meditations. So the fine and refined means like that. So you have to compare. So the few, I think for their renunciation is like that. Oh, human beings, they get old, wrinkles, and tooth falls, the hair falls, and they get sick, and then the form realm is like forever young, and they live for thousands, millions years. And so they don't fight for food, they don't fight for places, land, or they have no guns, no knife. Everything's just happened by product, right? So this is kind of, a non-Buddhist school, they kind of, this tool they use to encourage themselves to continuously meditate on Om Namah Shiva or Om, or how's that? Sometimes, so the person who has so much familiarized these meditations in those non-Buddhist school, this is even when they are sleeping, their breath in and out gives the sound. It makes the sound of Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Om Namah Shiva, Om Namah Shivas. The Shiv Bhakt, when they breathe, right? The sound of the breath that making the sound of Shiva, right? Sometimes the Shiv Shambho, so Shiv. Right? So yeah, when they ordinary practitioners, when they go to bed, and the first kind of when they sleep, Om Namah Shiva, they sleep. In the morning they wake up, Om Namah Shiva. The Shiv, the sound of the peace, represent the peace. Right? And sometimes they're so confused, yet sometimes they're confused. Sometimes they think Shiv is there's a person, the first yogi who first came in this earth. There's a man, right? And he is still live on this earth. And sometimes this is the Shiv is the kind of, the core of all elements. It's the energy. So sometimes this is. Right? So the kind of, the origin of all this, the space and the air and heat and moistures is the Shiv. Right? So they haven't really figured out what is Shiv means. So, but this Sanskrit word, the Shiv, and interpreted in many ways. Even the praises to the Bodhisattva Muni, Nagarjuna is from this Pasham Shivam, right? Pasham Shivam. Pasham means pacification and peace. Peace through pacification. So that peace in the Sanskrit word used Shivam. Right? So what you are pacifying is pacifying the mental construct, the concept of mental construct, the construct of birth, right? Birth or born or arising or disintegrations, coming and going and same and difference, all these mental construct, right? Pacify through wisdom realizing emptiness. As a result, Shivam is the permanent state of peace. So anyway, as the Sanskrit words, it's all interpretable Sanskrit, as I mentioned the Friday in Amitha. So always in the English they will translate what's the elixir or sometimes nectar. So something drinkable, like something like, and the Sanskrit words not always the interpret in the kind of nectar or to drink. Is Amrita means free from dying. As a free from, again, so free from dying means what is dead, what is alive. So the dead is the person who's keep drinking the poison of afflictive emotions. So those are considered as the dead. And then the person who is trying to overcome the afflictive emotions through their knowledge is alive. So the nectar means the individual who keep drinking the knowledge that can overcome the all the defects and afflictive emotions are alive, means they are survive. They will be, these people will be, survive or protect from samsaric activities, samsaric problems. So the Amrita always mean interpreted in many ways. Right? In the Tibetan, they own translate Duzi, right? So Duzi means antidote of the evil.
I got confused here, Geshe, because you were talking about Shivam. And when you were talking about Shivam, and you seem to relate it somehow to emptiness.
Yeah.
And so first I thought you were talking about kind of a non-Buddhist view of affliction because it was related to Shivam. But then you brought in emptiness, and suddenly it sounded like you were talking about this whole Shivam thing in the Buddhist context of it didn't ultimately have a self-identity or a pointable self, but it was related to emptiness. So I got confused. Are you talking about the Buddhist view or the non-Buddhist view here? Because Shivam brought together with emptiness, and now I'm a little confused here.
So this is always a problem when you try to everything wrap up in your language. So you are never, right? You're never able to get out from the language. So here we are in free market. So I'm in free market. You are in small stores, liquor store. So trying to wrap up in the language and term. So that's where you have problems. So, and even the Sanskrit, sometimes the meaning changes, kind of keeping the word as an adjective and noun, that change the meanings. Right. So non-Buddhist school and the Buddhists, so they can come right together, agree on like they can use, they both use the Shiva or Shivam or Shiv, right? But their interpretation is totally different. In non-Buddhist school, Shiv means source of energy. Shiv meant the person who created the whole world for non-Buddhist school. And the Sanskrit word Shiv literally never kind of, never hold back in one terms. So in the Sanskrit, we use the Shiva used by the Mahayana practitioners, Mahayanas. So those days, Shiv is actually in the Sanskrit words is a peace. Right? Shivam means one who is in peace, one who has has attained the peace. So in that case, in the Maya, Nagarjunas from the beginning of the root of the middle way, it's homage to the Bodhisattva Muni, and Nagarjuna use the term Shivam for to indicate the become the peace or gain the peace through pacification of the mental construct. So that Shiv, then Buddhist particular Nagarjunas and interpret is peace gained through pacifying the mental construct. So it's the Shiva, the sound, it not belongs to no one, not belongs to the non-Buddhist school and not belongs to the Buddhists. It's just a language. So it can be interpreted in many ways. I think this is the kind of religiously thinking, and everything has to be wrapped up in terms. So if I say God and you say Allah, then we fight because you don't say God. So, some people, they think, right, in old time in India, some of the Sai Baba and Ramakrishna, they say, even the Sai Baba always says Allah, but he says, and as when he prays to God, he always used Allah, and when he blessed, and he always said Ram. So many people confused. So some Hindu says, oh, he is not a Hindu because he's not using. He always says Allah. So, and some Muslim says, no, he's not a Muslim. He always says Ram. Ram bless you. So the Sai Ram understands. It's just a sound. And you see in the in Guru Puja, there is the sound that use alala lalaho. So that what is the sound indicates alala lalaho means. Or in the Christian, they use amen, right? So what comes in your mind? What is in your mind when you express amen or alala or Allah? So there's some kind of excitement, fascination, the quality of the God, and you can use Allah, you can use alala, or you can use amen, right? So you cannot the wrap up in one terms. The sound is not belongs to any nation. Right? So it's the language. Yeah, language. Language is simply to express your mental creation. So lacking realization suchness. Furthermore, the Sharvaka and the Pratigya Buddha, by lacking this realization of suchness, again, they sometimes use realization of suchness, realization of emptiness, realization of absence of intrinsic existence, realization of lacking intrinsic existence, whatever, the same thing, suchness. So sometimes in the Tibetan, Tekonani, Tongbani, like the reality as it is, or reality as it is, or emptiness, or the ultimate nature. So the different terms, different words, but same meaning. The suchness would then objectify the aggregates of form and so on as well as real. So their mind would continue to be distorted. In that case, their realization of the selflessness of person would be superficial and incomplete. So what it means is, if your realization of the selfness of person is merely understanding of absence of self-sufficient I, so that is not complete and not complete understanding emptiness of the person. The absence of self-sufficient I means there is no independent I. That's much, right? And there is no I independent and permanent. By refuting independent and permanent I, still not necessarily you have realized or you have revealed the absence of intrinsic I. Right? Superficially incomplete, for they would not have eradicate the mind that perceive the aggregates, the basis for conceiving the self personhood as real. This suggests that if one has not eradicated the object of apprehension in relation to the grasping at the aggregates, the designated basis as real. So designated basis is that designated entity, right? What is the designated entity? Is I. The person is a designated entity. A designated base is the body, feeling, perceptions, right? A tall man is the designated entity, and tall body is the designated basis, is the base, right? So when the tall man, right, when the tall man is designated as a tall by depending on the body. So this very body, by depending on this body, he identified as the tall. So this is not intrinsic because your tallness is based on the body. When you find this body is compared with much taller than, so again, this concept of tallness will change, right? So concept of tall, now he is no longer tall, right? So when his body compared with someone shorter, then by depending on that body, and he become the tall. So this is not, the tallness not exists by their own essence. It's depending on the body, and body by itself not making him So it's comparing relatively, right? Relatively, because when this body compared with something, and that body helped you to become at the top. So no intrinsic existence means tallness is not in here with his body. If the tallness of that person is intrinsically or in here with his body, wherever this body, and that should be that should be enough to become the tall. So this body brings to the someone taller, and he still has to be tall. Right. So the tall man is the identified and knowable to be tall by depending on his body, and the body also the kind of body also depending on other body. It requires another body, right, to to become the basis of tall. So there is no essence. The essence of the tall is not by himself, not by body himself, right? It's dependently. So this is why the Prasangika school says nothing intrinsic. There is no such thing that exists by their own essence. So designated basis as real. As long as there is the mind that is kind of the conceiving the designated basis as real, as long as you have the mind that grasping your body is intrinsically exist and you intrinsically exist. As long as you believe that your feeling is intrinsically exist, and then that you yourself is also intrinsically exist, right? You being sad is intrinsically exist because what makes you sad, the feeling is intrinsically exist. So, designated as real. One will also have not eradicate the object of apprehension in relation to the grasping at the person and designated attributes as real. In that case, Chandrakirti text shows since one would have not realized the person to be empty of true existence, one then would have also not realized the selflessness of person in its entirety. So which means emptiness can be used, or the language of the emptiness can be used by Sutantaka school, Vivashika school, Mainona school, Prasangika school. They all use the same language, emptiness. But so the meaning, like Sutantaka school, Mainona school, this is absence of self-sufficient I is emptiness. And the Prasangika school said, no, this is not the entirety of the emptiness. Right. And sometime then in non-Buddhist school, I have read maybe a long time, I forgot, one of the Vishnu Bhakt, kind of, Bhakt means devotee, right? Devotee of the Vishnu. And he praises to the Vishnu with explaining the emptiness, right? From the empty you smell, you hear things. So he was praising the Vishnus. You have you don't really intrinsically exist. What he meant is you are not the earth, but without you, earth cannot function. You are not in air. You are not air, but without you, air is not moving. So he was kind of actually believing that the air, motion of the air, the heat, the earth, right, everything's breathe and functioning due to your own. You are the source of it. You are the creator of that. So they sometimes use the term of emptiness. And also some people, they still use emptiness means nothing. yeah, it's emptiness, there's nothing. So the meaning of this point that presented above seems especially difficult to comprehend, even those who typically rely on the tradition of the Chandrakirti and the Shantideva's works appears to have struggled to explain them well. So, to critically examine this issue of whether Shamaka and the Pratyeka Buddha possess the realization emptiness, I will present here how the doubt arises in the first place, how to resolve it. So the doubt, caution, it is certainly the case that one can and does establish by means of the valid cognition the 16 characteristics of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanent and selflessness. The latter here, the understood in terms of the absence of substantially existing of self-sufficient person that is neither identical nor separate from the aggregates. So not the same, not the different from the I, which is not the same with body, not the different from the body. So from the aggregates. When this happens, it will also emerge that the principal trainees of such path will come to cultivate the great familiarity with such understanding of the selflessness. And if this can happen, then direct realization of selflessness of the person can be established through the reasoning that proves how yogic direct perception is possible. So yogic direct perceptions. So any cognitions, any inferential cognizers is suitable or can, any inferential cognizer has the potential to become the yogic direct perceptions. Right? Any inferential cognizers. Yogic direct perceptions means, so here this is, can anger and attachment turn into yogic direct perceptions? And they say no. Can compassion, the realization of the impermanence can turn into yogic direct perceptions? They say yes. Now the question is why? Why attachment cannot perfect? Why compassion can perfect? Why wisdom realizing impermanence can perfect and turning into yogic direct perceptions? So then the answer for that is attachment is base, sometimes this is the baseless. The mind of the attachment, the mind of the anger is the baseless, because the object they're apprehending or conceiving is non-exist. So any object that perceived and conceived by the subject is baseless, and this particular subject cannot be turned into yogic perceptions. So the impermanent and the compassion can be turned into yogic perceptions because this perceptions is unmistaken with respect to its actual object. So, and then ten things you consume as you gamble and medavas. All right. So, yogic direct perceptions require two, the mind which can turn into yogic direct perception should have the two qualities, should possess the two qualities. Means, tenpa means firm basis, or something that is based on the logic, something based on, knowledge, right? And the second is when you familiarize, it will continuously kind of, it can enhance byproduct, right? So the anger and attachment can be continuously enhanced, but it has no firm base. So wisdom realizing emptiness and impermanence realizing emptiness or impermanence, all, more you familiarize, it will kind of enhance byproduct, and it has firm base. Right? It's not a baseless. Right? So the base here means the object that you're apprehending or conceiving, and it has to exist in the reality. Right? So anger, apprehending the object 100% negative, and attachment, conceiving the objects 100% favorable, attractive.
So when we discuss direct realization, when it says that direct realization, does that mean that it realizes something without the thought consciousness?
Yeah, without thought, without imaginations. Direct perception means you perceive something, like eye consciousness perceiving the color. So that's the direct perceptions. So right now, our understanding of emptiness, impermanence is through the mediation, through the imaginations, right? So through the mediation, we understand something. So when this mind, through the meditations, constant, the reflecting, and then it will become the mind that directly perceiving, like eye conscious seeing the color, right? So that's kind of direct yogic perceptions, means without relying on imagination or the mental construct.
So when you say direct realization of emptiness, means we don't think about absence of something in this kind of way.
Yeah. So not necessarily, you have to create some kind of image. So sometimes you use those imagination, mental concept, the term that they use, yu means the indicator, right? It's indication of the indicator for language, right? Yeah, so direct perception is possible. If so, it will then follow the such path of seeing realization, realizing such selflessness can be eliminate acquired afflictive emotion. When this, as I skipped, self-sufficient and the identical self, this will happen. We will merge the principle, the trainings of the such path. We will come to cultivate the great familiarity with such understanding of the selflessness. And if this can happen, then the direct realizations of the selfless person can be established through the reasoning that proves how yogic perceptions is possible. If so, it will then follow that such path of seeing, realizing such selflessness can be eliminated, the acquired afflictions. When this established, then the path of meditations, wherein selflessness persons that has already been directly seen is made familiar, becomes established as well. This means that then such a path can eliminate even the innate afflictions, thus establishing the possibility of the cessation of all contaminant afflictions. In that case, it will follow that even without realizing emptiness, one can eliminate all the afflictive emotions of the three realms of together with their seat. This would be so because the elimination of the affected by means of the two paths, the path of seeing and the path of meditation, would have taken place in the manner of, as described above, eliminating the afflictions through the superabundance path. Therefore, even with the path contemplating the 16 characteristics, such as impermanence, all the afflictions can be eliminated. So this is the doubt, the questions. So question here is the opponent or the person's the saying that maybe the wisdom realizing emptiness, absence of intrinsic existence, is not required for the afflictive emotion, overcoming afflictive emotion. Is simply reflecting on the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths. You can overcome, because in the sutra, Buddha says the Four Noble Truths. So by reflecting on the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, and one can perfectly see the truth of suffering. By that, one can overcome the origin of the suffering. By that, one can actualize the cessation of the suffering. By that, one can complete the path, right, for the liberations. So this in the Four Noble Truths, that stated that through the reflecting on the 16 attributes of Four Noble Truths is the way to overcome afflictive emotions. If this is the case, then you don't need the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this is a kind of the doubt. So then, because they already mentioned that selflessness in the 16 attributes, there is a selflessness person. So this selflessness within the 16, the four attributes of the truth of suffering is without impermanent and conditional suffering, and empty or permanent I, and then the selflessness, the four attributes for the truth of suffering. So if you understand the first impermanent and the conditional suffering, empty or permanent I, absence of the self, right? So if your understanding of the absence of the empty of self is merely kind of empty of self-sufficient I, then with this 16 characteristic, you cannot overcome the seed of the afflictive emotions. If the four attributes of the truth of suffering, impermanent, conditional suffering, empty or permanent I, so empty or permanent as empty of self-sufficient I, the selflessness is the absence of intrinsic existence of self. Then this, reflecting on this 16 attributes, you can overcome the seed of the afflictive emotions.
Does that mean the other schools have the third and fourth, the attributes is the same, means same thing?
So they all have the same term. There's empty selflessness. So 4 attributes of truth of suffering: impermanent, conditional suffering, empty, and selflessness. So this is what Sautrantika school used the same term. Vibhashaka school, Minority school, Methodist school, even the Prasangika school they use. Now, when it comes to the selflessness, they have a different kind of, different level of the degree of understanding of the selflessness. So, which means, again, it's implying that Sautrantika school knowledge, Vibhashaka school knowledge, with this kind of alone, you cannot overcome the afflictive emotions, which means Prasangika schools, you have to have a Prasangika school point of view in order for the house eliminating the seed of the afflictive emotions. So that's why in the Buddha Palita, in his argument, it says, Minority school, it says, you still hold, you haven't really get rid the non-Buddhist schools taught. So non-Buddhist school taught means, so there's the grasping of self. So anyway, the question is very simple, because it's just the kind of, the ambiguity is the base of just the term, 16 attributes. So 4 noble truths, the truth of suffering has 4 attributes, origin of suffering has 4 attributes, the cessations with 4 attributes, the path, the 4 attributes, right? So the truth of suffering, the 4 impermanent, conditional suffering, empty, and selflessness. Right? So when it comes to the explaining that what is impermanence, and the Prasangika school, Sautrantika school, Minority school, they're all saying impermanence, instantly changing. And conditional suffering means something that is continuously, something that continues through the force of karma and afflictive emotion are known as the conditional suffering. So this is also kind of agree, and they all agree on that, right? And then empty. What is that empty? So then Sautrantika school, Minority school says, empty or permanent I. And then with question, when you ask the Prasangika school, what do you mean by that empty? The 3rd attributes. In Prasangika schools, empty of self-sufficient I. And then when last, the selflessness. And in Sautrantika school, Minority school, they say selflessness means empty of self-sufficient I. And the Prasangika school says empty of intrinsic I. So that's how it kind of, so they have different understanding. So the question is like that. So here the Lama Tsongkapha says, let me explain it like this. We do not say that if one has found the view of suchness, it would be impossible to establish the truth of 16 attributes such as impermanence by means of valid cognition. We do not say that. Or that the principal trainees of these paths cannot be meditated upon them with great effort, and on the basis of such meditations directly perceive the coarse level of the selflessness and achieve familiarity with what they have perceived. So we did not say that. That means, yes, I agree. So if you're reflecting on the 16 attributes, and particularly empty and selflessness is your understanding, is kind of grosser level of emptiness, not complete and total understanding emptiness. But still, by that, you can achieve the path. You can gain yogic direct perceptions. That the main thing is here. We are trying to find the path which can eliminate the seed of the afflictive emotion, right? So for that, your path is not enough. You need to improve that, right? So then says, and what do you say then? Reply, we say the path described thus, does not constitute the genuine comprehension, realization of the selfless of persons. We say the described does not constitute genuine. So your understanding of empty and selflessness is not genuine or total understanding of the emptiness. As such, this path is neither supramundane path of seeing nor the supramundane path of meditations. Just if this path alone cannot be turned into path of seeing, path of meditations, right? So we are not kind of denying this cannot be turned into yogic direct perceptions. Yes, these are all the knowledge that unmistakably understood something, right? Some revealed something. But so as it revealed the truth, you can turn into yogic direct perception, but just by that knowledge, you cannot attain the path of seeing meditation. Superman path of meditations, and therefore it cannot be eliminated the seed of the object of elimination by either the path of seeing, path of meditations. Here, the tradition of the Chandrakirti would be no interpret such presentations. Would be interpret such presentations. Those statements about how such path they constitute the path of seeing and the meditations, how they eliminate object of relinquishment together with their seed, how at the end of these two paths one attain the arhat state, and so on, as a provisional teaching. So this is the analogous to the following example. And again, you says, so some may ask question to the Prasangika school, does that mean the 16 attributes, right? Particularly empty or permanent I, and the selfless or self-sufficient I. This teaching, do you mean that Buddha hasn't really taught this? Right? It's not the teaching of the Buddha. And Prasangika school says, yes, Buddha taught this for certain audience because something that is suitable for their own knowledge, right? So this is why we say this teaching is provisional teaching. It's interpretable teaching. This is like, doctor can give the medicine, based on the patient's, the illness. If you have slightly headache, doctor may give you the the medicine that is not that expensive. All right. So that does not mean the doctor has no better medicine. So something that you can afford. So this much doctor has given to the particular patients. So it's a provisional teaching. And sometimes Jerry Hawkins and his translations to this, or he always interpretable teaching and a definite teaching. So here this text also used the term intent of the Buddha, intent of the Buddha. So now there is intent of the certain sutra, which is still not the intent of the Buddha. Intent of the Buddha, but not the sutra's intent. Right. So, and the how's that? Theravada traditions, the Four Noble Truths, and their meanings can be intent, or is a thought, or it is the intent of certain sutra, but it's not necessarily the intent of the Buddha. Buddha is not really Buddha when give the teaching is always according to the disciples' mental dispositions. It's not because of what he has known, right? So like a teacher give the teaching to the students. If the students are kindergarten, the teacher, even he is professor, he is very good in writing and very intelligent, but he teach alphabet. Right? So that's why the interpretable teachings. So definite teaching the ultimate. So one might follow that Chittamata's negation of the indivisible atoms and external object composed through the aggregates, through aggregation of such atom, as well as its negation of the subject that possess the substance different from its object can be established by means of the valid cognition. So furthermore, one might allow that if a trainee tempted by such an approach were to cultivate the familiarity with these truths he has perceived over a long period, he could come to have a direct insight, and that what was seen could be made familiar. However, the statement that about how one can traverse the 10 Bodhisattvas ground as well as the 3 final stage of the path. On that basis, this is the Madhyamika will interpret provisional. The same is the true of example cited above. So this is the kind of you're saying that they're setting the example. So every Buddha teachings, every sutras, the kind of intent is not necessarily for everybody, right? So and then says mind-only school refuting or denying minute partless particle, and mind-only school also this is if there's external form. If there is external form, then there must be minute partless particle. So if there is no minute partless particle, there is no external form. The external form, if there is external form, then there must be form that is built based on the collection of the minute partless particle. So that by refuting minute partless particle, and then says there is no subject, there is no consciousness, which is different from, right? Different from the external form. So which means any form that you see, the color or taste or sound, is all nature of the consciousness, that nothing really happened to exist from the collection of the particles. So but this is the Chittamatra, mind-only school, that says, so that mind only means everything arises from the mind, right? Smell, taste, sound, color, shape, everything arises from the mind. Even the concepts, they say, the names, names, the concept all arises from the mind. And then there says eye consciousness and color, right? So both arises from the one seed of the mind. So like a plant, they manifest as a two kind of, the sprout manifests as two, that there's a two leaves, right? So like one become the form, one become the consciousness that's experiencing it, right? So both arises from the one, one seed. And then like, a relation, the concept, like a kind of law and cause and effect. And then, this is the table. Things become the basis of name. These are all arises from the, the imprints that left by labeling, right? So many lives we have habituation of labeling on form, right, in the things. That imprints that gives you the, the concepts. So they all actually originate from or derive from or born from the consciousness. So everything is nothing but consciousness. So this is Minority School says. So this whole teachings, there is some sutra, there is some teaching of the Buddha that sutra meant, yes, this is this is true, but the intent of that sutra is not really perfect intent of the Buddha. So this is how Buddha find this suitable, this particular people. So it's the kind of, provisional means here, interpreted as provisional or interpretable teaching. And Buddha also says some of the people who has so much influence and impact from the non-Buddhist school, and they try to follow the Buddha, and they, in their mind, there's kind of solely believe there's the Atma. So for those Buddhists, yes, there is self-sufficient I. There's the Atma, and who carries the burden of the five aggregates. So Buddha also kind of, verbally kind of said, taught or said to this non-Buddhist school. Like sometimes His Holiness says, we all children of God, so we should be, you should be, connected. So we should see each other, brothers and sisters. Even others, your wife, you can see a sister. So anyway, so this is sometimes is the Buddha teaches out of compassion, not that he has intelligence. Right? Teaching out of compassion, not intelligence. He is not proving how intelligent he is. He is always out of compassion. What is suitable for others? So, and also you can understand the Chandrakirti's text from the beginning. He presses to the compassion, not the wisdom realizing emptiness, not the Buddha, not the Bodhisattvas. Although one meditates 16 attributes such as impermanence, it is the realizing of selfless of the person defined above. This is the assert by the other Buddhist school to be the actual path that frees one from the afflictions. The compendium, the Abhidhamma, for example, explain how it is focused, mention of selflessness that eliminate the afflictions, while the 15 other characteristics are for helping to true purify the afflictions. So in line with this, the exposition of the valid cognitions, the Dhammakirti says, one is freed through the view of emptiness, and others, the contemplation, support that. And 16 attributes, the selflessness is to overcome, to directly applies as antidote of the afflictive emotion, and other impermanence, conditional suffering, and the origin of the suffering, all these attributes to support that, to strengthen that, the realization of selflessness. So Dhammakirti said that. So the one is freed through the view of emptiness. The selflessness is the antidote directly applied to overcome, and other 15 attributes to support that. Misled by the praise, the view of the emptiness here, even some Indian masters assert that this refute the view of realizing suchness, this is, decidedly not the meaning. Here to view the realizing the person, the empty, self-sufficient, substantial reality. Such a path cannot eliminate seed of the afflictions. So even some Indian, the great masters, is referring to the masters of the Vajrayana school, Savantika school, particularly Dharmakirti. So Dharmakirti understanding of the selflessness is empty of self-sufficient I. Right? So with the river and the emptiness, the substantial reality. But it can temporarily relieve the manifest afflictions. So manifest afflictions. For if we admit, as was stated above, that the path that compare realms of the existing in terms of the level of refinement, a path shared with non-Buddhists can eliminate manifest afflictions below the peak of existence, then there is no question that path referred to above can also temporarily relieve the manifest afflictions. So the afflictions here, the phrase temporarily relieve manifest afflictions are the afflictions characterized by the object and aspect as defined in the two Abhidhamma systems. The manifest afflictions or subconsciously or inactive afflictions too. The manifest afflictive emotion means that is afflictive emotion which is perceiving something, which is conceiving something, which has already created the image. So that is the active afflictive emotions called manifest. So some of the afflictive emotions, even the seed, the habit, all are afflictive emotion, but they're not necessarily only they have the object, right? So sometimes people call what we call subconscious or inactive or imprints or how's there. So Tibetan you call palanyans. Palayan means kind of, sleeping consciousness. Such as the grasping of true existing in the Chandrakirti traditions is said to be a form of afflictive ignorance, as well as other afflictions defined from this standpoint, consisting both of cognitive and non-cognitive forms. Even their manifest level cannot be eliminated by the path of described above. That said, there is indeed this difference, although manifest afflictions present on the peak of existence cannot be eliminated by mundane's path that compares realms in terms of their refinement. So they can be eliminated through the cultivating the familiarity with realization of core and self, the core selflessness or person as defined above in the Abhidharma systems. With this, I have explained clearly the commentary, the statement of how path divorced from the realization of suchness that are yet claimed to be antidote against afflictions are similar to the mundane's path that trace the level of refinement of the realms of the existing, and how, like those of non-Buddhists, this path cannot be eliminated all the afflictions. Yeah, just stop here now. So I think the meaning is not that difficult. So mundane's path with divorce of realization emptiness, and reflecting on the 16 attributes, still lacking or divorce of perfect understanding emptiness. This is true. The mundane single-pointed path can overcome manifest afflictive emotions below the peak of the existence, like formless realms, right? And still, so mundane single-pointed meditations cannot overcome or make inactive the peak of the second existing delusion. And likewise, 16 attributes, reflecting on the 16 attributes, which is still lacking the perfect understanding emptiness. There's similar. So now, but it's not exactly the same, because 16 attributes is all the based on realizations, based on inferential cognizing. And mundane single-pointed meditation is meditation that is sustained by the habit and the concentrations, not by knowledge, not really based on inferential cognizing. So the steady of that path. So although it is not not the realization, the Prasangic school understanding emptiness, but the Sotanic school their understanding of impermanence, conditioned suffering, and empty or permanent I, absolute self-sufficient I, is still much stronger compared to the mundane single-pointed meditation. Mundane single-pointed meditation is very when you stop, when you come out of meditation, you become ordinary person. Right? So you can be provoked by someone, and you will generate anger, attachment, arrogance, right? Pride, like that. And reflecting on the 16 attributes, you have deeply generated genuine renunciations already. Right? You have already in the path. But because of the lacking, the complete, the emptiness, so you have not yet, right, gained the perfect antidote for the afflictive emotions. So emptiness is so important because simply kind of, there's a, how say, Buddha, one day there's a, Ajay King Ajay Shatru. He was so depressed and very remorse because he thought he caused the death of his father, and he thought he killed his father. So he came to the Buddha with very, very deep, sad, and regret, right? And Buddha kind of did what he, in the conversation, the Buddha lead him to introduce the emptiness. That when his mind really kind of, maybe not really necessarily he has kind of revealed the emptiness, but he kind of got it. So just by mind being able to see this is the truth. So within the minute, just within that teaching, he totally free from that remorse and deep sad. So that's how the emptiness is so powerful. There's a story again. One day, Shariputra complained to the Buddha because Shariputra witnessed the Manjushri explaining very detailed in emptiness to some disciple. So all the disciples fall in the loram. so Manjushri gave the teaching, very profound teaching, and all the disciples fall in nihilism, and then they die, they go on the hell. So Shariputra witnessed that. Shariputra says, that's very, very tragic. So he complained to Buddha, and the Buddha says, Manjushri, very skillful, very kind of, very intelligent. He knows that there's a certain karma. He cannot help them to fall in the loram. And he sent the loram with knowledge of emptiness. so when they go to loram, and they come back very fast, like a bouncing the ball. So that's Buddha said. Shariputra thought, because of his teaching, they went to fall loram. So Manjushri in those days, for sure, there's a certain they will go to loram, but I'm going to send them with this knowledge. Okay, any questions? I'll stop here maybe. Oh, this is my hand. Any questions?
There's a lot to digest, but you gave a very good summary at the end. That will kind of hit a lot of the key points.
Yeah. The last kind of, scoop of the last dosage has to be more kind of, if you digest that, then all these are just the languages and terms and sentences. So sometimes Lama Tsongkapha, you see, Lama Tsongkapha in his writing, he's very, everything he writes like scholarly. Yes. So people who has not much kind of study and then other books, so they get confused. So Buddha Palida's writings, Lama Tsongkapha writing, I see the difference. Chandrakirti also, like very much like Buddha Palida, direct. Lama Tsongkapha explain things like very scholarly, like very. So sometimes when you read the different kind of commentaries, the Buddha Pali, the way of kind of explaining, and Chandrakirti is the way, and you can imagine sometimes their personalities. So I see sometimes Buddha Pali does. Maybe, if you have too much questions, he may scold you. You can see his kind of personality from his way of writing, kind of, So disciple Lama Tsongkapha, the Kiru Rinpoche, the Geshe Rinpoche. And the Kiru Rinpoche, many times he would say kind of, harsh words. And Ayah, there was also like that. There was sometimes there's one, in Ayah there was text that said, so one who's continuously misleading, right, misunderstanding. So Ayah there says, so like, the poisonous snake, how much you give milk, so they turn into poison. So it won't help giving them water or the milk. It doesn't matter. It's all turned into poison. So I think this is kind of, again and again, reflecting and question and answering is very, very, very kind of, important. Otherwise, you can be misguided or mislead or misunderstand, right? So this is important. You fall and come back and again try to understand, and then falls there and here and again come back. So without doubt and ambiguity, no knowledge can gain. So you have to, but keep doubting again. So it's become the habit. It's not really good. Sometimes the languages, because I think culturally we have pretty much habituated and everything wrapping into the terms and the languages. So if you go with that, and then very difficult to see the reality as it is, because you always kind of try to find something in your own kind of, box. So it's not necessary. If something exists, it's not necessary. It should exist in your house or your box. So we are trying to figure out something that is not in you, something you haven't really revealed. So your mind has to be let open, and give your mind to the logic and the reasonings. So you just say, wherever logic is leading, so I will accept, I'll go with that. And then constantly questioning on the logic and the reasonings. So logic, the reasoning is very kind of, relying on, if there's something reliable, then it's the valid reasoning. Not the tradition, not the culture. Yeah. Okay then. Chanjusum Jerimoje, Majebana, Geji, Gevanyamba, Mevanya, Kone, Kondo, Pevrish, Tony Dawa Rimboji, Majebana, Geji, Gevanyamba, Mevanya, Kone, Kondo, Pevrish, Pamasimja, Dada Danges, Gendo Tamja Dog, Don, Chanjusum, Kanda Sushu, Tada Punja Mono Jojiruchi, Carrera Voko, Shingos, Pendam, the woman, Joe, Net, Jerez, Tinzi.
May the precious body mind not yet born arise and grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all the happiness. And may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred lands surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. More powerful chants the Ten Grounds remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Om Namah Shiva.
Bye, Krishna.
Bye. Om Namah Shiva.